And we are back. Our first guest tonight is the lead architect of the Saenger renovation. And she's here to fill us in on the architectural side of the project here at the Saenger Theater. Due to some scheduling issues, we are actually doing this interview by Skype right now. Please welcome Ms. Leigh Jaunsen. Now, you've worked on a lot of projects across the coast already, including historic renovations, the Shuckers Ballpark. It's kind of an impressive list. Can you tell us a little bit about working on some of those projects?
Sure. Yeah, we've had the great opportunity and privilege of working on a lot of city projects. So especially after Katrina, there was a lot of the infrastructure rebuilding, like the Civic Center, library, the visitor center, and kind of a really special one was the Biloxi Lighthouse. We got to learn all about how that was, in order to restore it after Katrina, we had to learn about how that was put together and the best ways to restore that. And we've kind of brought that same team of historic people that have the historic preservation experience. We brought that same team to the Saenger. So.
Let's talk a little bit about the Saenger. You're the lead architect. What is the architectural goal in restoring this theater?
Well, we have to adhere to the Secretary of the Interior standards to restore it to its historic significance as much as possible. So this, I guess one thing that's kind of interesting about the Saenger and that we really had to work through with Mississippi Department of Archives and History was the fly tower, which is, the structure that rises above the main roof there, which is where all the curtains and the grids are. That was built with speed tile, which is which you can still see. It's the sort of clay masonry, lighter colored masonry that's at the top. Well, that's not a very stable kind of building piece anymore, and so we don't. So do you replace it with something that? Do you build back what was not really structurally? You didn't have a lot of structural integrity to begin with in terms of water being able to get through the building, or are you allowed to build it back with a much more stable material? So
that's because of the historical aspect of it, because the problem is if you use the original material, you don't have the current support structure that would meet current code. Is that I guess the best way of putting it?
Yes, and I think even if we could have met current code, the material allows water to pass through the building. So the whole purpose of restoring what we're restoring in this first phase is to make the building watertight.
Yeah, and now, can you walk us through a little bit of the restoration process? Where does somebody even start on something this big? Obviously, I know that you're saying that we have to start with that part because that seems to be the most challenging part. But
right.
When you're dealing with a project this big, where outside of that, where do you start? Do you start with a roof? Do you start with a foundation? Do you start with what do you start with?
Yeah, I think when we started, we weren't necessarily planning to do this first phase. We didn't realize the significance of the damage to that structure until we got into it. So the whole process is kind of working through, what can you afford to do? How do you break it up into the most beneficial phases? So this first phase is kind of a just absolutely necessary phase, and the goal here is to make it watertight. So in that case, you start with the roof, definitely rebuilding the scuppers, rebuilding all that roof structure in order to try to get it watertight. And the other issue is the brick needs to be repointed, which means all that mortar needs to come out and be replaced. And that will lend some additional water tightness to the building. but we're not necessarily doing all of that in this first phase yet. So,
is there anything in particular that you and your team want to save or preserve the most in all of this?
well, once we get to the interiors, I think we definitely have to maintain that interior character of the building. As far as the exterior goes, we're not actually even really doing any work on that main elevation where the Saenger sign is. But everything we're doing right now is really not going to be extremely visible, but it's going to make the rest of the work viable because it'll be protected.
Got it. So you're handling the structural aspects. Somebody else will come in and handle the aesthetics.
Well, we hope to, once the city gets more money, then we could do the interiors process.
Got it.
The interiors part of it. So
Got it.
that'll be the most exciting part, I think. People will be really excited to get back in it and have it be all restored and looking great.
Well, it's like artwork. I was a painter and a sculptor before I went into law, and yeah, my background, my undergrad's actually in fine applied art and graphic design and things like that. And so you'd start off working on a piece of art, and it looks like a total mess at the beginning, and it's not until you get to the home stretch that their eyes start lighting up, and they go, "Oh wow, this is really cool. This is really nifty." Thank you, Leigh, so much. I know we had a little challenge making things happen the other day on the actual set, which was right there at the theater, and we really enjoyed our time there. But I'm glad we were able to catch up today.
Me too. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, David.
Take care.
Bye-bye.